Hello everyone and welcome. Today is Sunday, August 17th. I'm Mitchell Wiechek. This is the Adorable Anarchist World here on the Voluntary Virtues Network. First off, I just want to apologize for last week's episode. Just some bad news I got before coming on, and I was just not prepared for it at all. But this week I have some interesting topics and some things to talk about, and hopefully hoping to regain the attention of some people, because God knows I need to get the views up on this network. But first things first, I peddled a lot of bullshit on this network before with businesses that looked like they had hope and then ended up falling off the map. Boris T, Privacy Shield, so many things that I had hopes for, but they never ended up going anywhere. And now I'm about to peddle one final thing, and I hope to at least get some support for this. Now then, we're not getting amazing views here on the network. And one of the best ways to spread a message is with comedy. We can see that with people like Joe Rogan, George Carlin, Doug Stanhope. Whether you agree with 100% of their views or not, they still do a good job spreading their message with, well, comedy. And not to say that us libertarians don't do that either. After all, the guys from the Journalistic Revolution have their statism videos, which are pretty funny. And, of course, we have Joy Cam doing things. But what if we were to try and do a sort of, how should I describe this? Basically, the idea is to do somewhat of a drama comedy that has a good philosophical undertone, too. Basically, we're looking to tell a serious story that can get a good message across, but at the same time do it in a humorous way. Think of it kind of like the philosophical version of a show like Scrubs or How I Met Your Mother or Community, something like that. And I already have the Facebook page up for this project, and I'm almost done with writing the pilot episode for this. And as soon as the pilot episode is finished, I will be putting that on the Facebook page open for anyone to go check out and see. And if things go right and we can get what we need to make more episodes, we will, and make that pilot obviously too. But there's so much, and I have like a list of things that we could cover with the characters given, with the background given. There's so much that can be done. And I'm not going to talk about this too much, but more will be revealed in time. Just go check out the Facebook page for The Distance. It's just a big top secret picture right now and about 2 statuses. But I already got someone else on board who's willing to write, who's willing to help me write and everything, and another comedian. So if you're interested at all, we're also looking for comedians and writers. I want to get input from everyone here because obviously I can't do this all on my own because I'm no Superman. All right, but moving on to the first topic of this video today. Now, I don't have any respect for anyone from Fox News. And there have been people who've left Fox News over the years, and I have to say I've grown to be like, okay, I still don't like you, I don't agree with a lot of your views, but I'll throw you a bone mainly because you're at least sticking it to the man. Michael Savage, for example, who went to Prison Planet. Don't agree with him on everything, but as far as I'm concerned, he's better than Rush Limbaugh any day. And recently, Eric Bolling of Fox News' The Five made a little comment claiming to be an anarcho-capitalist. And first things that people think of when they hear a hardcore conservative coming out as an anarchist or libertarian seems to be Glenn Beck, because Glenn Beck has tried to move over to libertarian, and to his own credit, he's come more around to things like medical marijuana and gay marriage. So that's kind of where I do cut Glenn Beck some slack, even though I do have my major differences with who Glenn Beck is. But first off, I'm going to point out why Glenn Beck trying to be a libertarian really wasn't that surprising when he made the switch, or if you could even call it that. First off, Glenn Beck, my dad listens to Glenn Beck a lot, and all throughout high school and middle school, whenever he was driving me, I had to listen to Glenn Beck or someone on that horrible conservative station. And even before Glenn Beck came out claiming to be a libertarian, he still would try to claim to be a libertarian to a certain point. Even if it was nothing like the way he's claiming it now, he still did talk a great amount about the Libertarian Party and how he disagreed with George Bush during his terms. So in a way, that's kind of why it wasn't so surprising. And another reason why Glenn Beck making the switch to libertarian wasn't very surprising is because conservatives have kind of been trying to hijack that term for a while anyways. I mean, I don't know if you ever Googled libertarian dating, but the first thing that comes up is a Republican dating website. But as for an anchor coming out to claim something like anarcho-capitalism or anarchism, now that is exceedingly rare. Like, I had a look on my face like, did this guy really just say that? And so I'm going to start off by bringing up what this was in the context of. In the video on Fox, they were talking about millennials and why they're more inclined to think that socialism is good. Now, first off, I just want to point out this idea of millennials being separate and entire collectively thinking that socialism is good is a total false dichotomy, because you're generalizing what an entire generation is like, and that's not how it works. I mean, individuals are different. They have their different stands. Their different experiences lead them to different views on what a certain thing is. For instance, my sister's a millennial, but she doesn't think socialism's a good idea at all, even though she's been raised in a very statist paradigm. And the article they reference is from Reason magazine, and I do like Reason, but I think this ideal of looking at millennials in this way is it's a total false paradigm. And the one thing that they do talk about is that millennials are mostly being brainwashed by the schooling system, being made to thought that socialism is good with those Marxist professors and whatnot. And I've had my fair share of them, so I'm not gonna pretend that they don't exist. But I will say this: for every leftist professor, there's always that hardcore right conservative professor to counteract it. Or I don't even know if you can call public school teachers professors. It's probably like an insult to the really big ones at Harvard or all those other Cambridge and whatnot. Duke. I'll reference Duke because at least I know their economics department is classically liberal. But somewhere down the line, it led to them saying, okay, well, how about we compare capitalism and socialism? And here, I'm going to read Eric Bolling's quote out loud so you can sort of come to your own conclusion. But I myself have already kind of thought about this. Let's talk about the difference between socialism and capitalism. Okay, you may not like the extent to which we are capitalists. We may be overly capitalists, anarcho-capitalists. I know I am. I am proud of it. That is why I wore this today. You can't see what he's wearing, but he's wearing just a suit. Nothing really makes him stand out as an ANCAP. It's not like he's wearing black and yellow or anything. Difference is profit motive. The profit motive makes what you work harder. The profit motive makes your risk your own capital and labor. And the profit motive enables you to innovate and come up with new ideas that will help end up creating profits for yourself. And of course, that eventually would come out and help all those around you as well. But you know, that quote, it's not a particularly bad quote. I definitely agree with him on the idea of the profit motive and how it leads to innovation in the market. I mean, that's definitely one of the key things of why I'm an anarcho-capitalist, is because the profit motive simply leads to better innovation. That's why we have such great technology today. That's why I'm broadcasting to you right now over this. That's why I now have my own banner there at the bottom that I finally figured out to use. Innovation, the profit motive. It gives us nice, better things. But I kind of had to look away when I really looked into Bolling and saw that he supported an interventionist foreign policy and that he still advocates a state. Now then, first off, I just want to say, how exactly does your idea, Eric? If you do see this video by any chance, I highly doubt that you'll make it this far in. But if you do actually end up watching this, tell me, how exactly does your ideas of interventionist foreign policy fit with the ideas of Murray Rothbard's and his non-interventionist policy? And it seems that's a big contradiction. I mean, have you read Anatomy of the State? His entire book, Anatomy of the State, is dedicated to tearing apart what the state is. I mean, are you confusing the term anarcho-capitalism for that of laissez-faire capitalism? Because that sounds much more close to what you're trying to advocate here. Because you still advocate a state, but you're also advocating a state alongside laissez-faire capitalism. And luckily for you, there's a branch in the Austrian school of thought that does talk about having a state alongside laissez-faire capitalism. It's called liberalism. Ooh, liberalism. And I know that's the thing that all of you at Fox News dread to hear, the big L word, but you know, the funny part is, if you were to look back and look at the word liberalism, you would find out that that your stance is, if that is the case, that you're advocating a state alongside laissez-faire capitalism. I'm ignoring your interventionist policy at this moment. You would be much more closer to classical liberalism than anarcho-capitalism, because anarcho-capitalism, you're advocating total laissez-faire capitalism in markets, but without a state. You just want there to be markets and people exchanging peacefully without coercion or aggression from the state. And what else can I really say about this? Because there's only so much you can say about someone who claims to be an ANCAP but hasn't given you any other choices, any other things to talk about. And here, I'll close on this, because I have other things I do need to talk about on the show today with Ferguson and all. But if you are actually legitimate and you do consider yourself an anarcho-capitalist, if you actually have read some works of Murray Rothbard, or anyone else from the Austrian school for that matter, I'll throw you a bone. I highly recommend you really look into the politics a lot more other than just the economics, because the politics do play a big role in these ideologies as well. And if you actually are legitimate, I will leave you on a similar note that someone who talked similarly about Glenn Beck when he came out as a libertarian did. At least welcome to the movement, if you really are waking up slowly. If you are really just going through that minarchist phase, which so many of my anarchist companions seem to have gone through at least once in their life. Heck, I was once a minarchist too. So, if you are legitimate, Eric, and you are not a Francisco d'Anconia, because God knows if you're a conservative, I'm sure you've read Atlas Shrugged and you know who that is, welcome to the movement. Alright, what do I got next to cover? Oh, Ferguson, Missouri. Ferguson, Missouri. You know, it was funny with Ferguson. I wrote quite a few scripts up for this subject a few times over the week, and it seemed like every time I had it perfect, something happened in the news, and then all of a sudden I had to go backtrack and rewrite the whole thing and recover everything else. And even then, with everything I'm about to present to you, I'm going to miss a lot of points probably. There's a lot of things on here there's probably a lot of holes in here that I probably could have filled in, but I just didn't have the time to, because there's a lot of information coming out of this story. So I guess I'll start off by just saying that the people have really just reached a breaking point with the police state today. It's out of control. And Ferguson is a good example of how that breaking point is being vocalized, because there have been multiple times where the police state has really clamped down in America today. If you really Google it and look it up, like Anaheim, I believe, is one example. But they never really reached critical media viewership. Like, the media never really covered any of that. And I guess to start off, I'll try and recap what's really going on for any of you who really are in the dark and don't know much about this. August 9, 2014, in Ferguson, Missouri, a 17-year-old boy named Mike Brown was shot several times by an officer of FPD. And I'm not going to go in and try and recap the entire story that some witnesses have been putting forward, but it eventually ended with him getting shot twice, eventually turning around and putting his hands up to say, listen, I surrender at this point, I'm handing myself over, and the cops still continue to fire. And I am aware that Anonymous leaked the name of this officer, but once again, there's only so much information I can grab at a time. So I was not aware. I wasn't even made aware of this until I was talking to someone right before this episode, ironically enough. But here's what's really more interesting. In the hours following after the shooting, the officer who shot him did not call in the shooting. The radio airwaves were silent, and the dispatch was trying to get clarity on the situation because they didn't know what was going on. And that was another thing that some Anons had hacked, was the dispatch audio, which showed that the officer in question was not responding when dispatch was asking about what was going on, even when they mentioned that this is coming straight from the news, we need to know what's going on there. And after that, this started off as peaceful protesting, but then unfortunately it led to rioting and looting, which is it's pretty sad in a case like this, because if anyone's in there in Ferguson and somehow watches this and tolerates the first half of the video or just skips halfway through, try and prevent looting or rioting, or do whatever you can, because these type of things are only giving the state the excuse they need to clamp down with the police state. It's these type of things that give the hardcore conservatives like my dad the justification for force that they so desperately try to use in cases like this. And, you know, it's funny I mentioned that too, because right before I got on here, I saw news articles of apparently some citizens of Ferguson have taken it upon themselves to guard stores from being looted. And I think that's a wonderful way of showing that we don't need the police. We can, if this is really a problem, we will guard that on our own. Because I think even the people of Ferguson realize we can't let rioting and looting ruin this movement, this momentum we have going. We need to do something about this, and fast. And it's good to see that type of action. And of course, all of you who know, after all of that, what we saw was a total police state clampdown. And it really wasn't surprising. I mean, bulletproof vests, armored trucks, high-powered assault rifles. You know, it's funny. If you want to know who came for a riot, look who came dressed up and ready for it. But in the case for what police brutality, it's amazing to see how the police have been brutal. I mean, Anonymous said they would not leak anything if the police did not harm peaceful protesters, but once they started tear gassing them, that's when Anonymous really started, well, leaking and hacking and doing everything they do best. And I'll tell you, there's so much. This is so scattered because, like, it's very hard to organize all this because there's so much coming in and coming out, and so much that you have to confirm to be true, and some that can be fake. Another thing that was found was the police arresting protesters, confiscating phones, arresting reporters and confiscating their filming equipment. It's clear that the state is really trying to put Pandora back in its box at this point. But the problem is, the whole country pretty much knows about this by now. If you don't know about this, you've been living with your head in the sand. I mean, all right. To continue with the story now, and of course, the police have come out with a contradictory statement saying that the boy reached for the officer's weapon. But the problem with that is the witnesses say that the first shot was fired from inside the car. So if that was the case, for him to reach for the weapon seems quite illogical. And if anything, if the police are telling the truth with this, the way I look at this is there should be a legitimate investigation. But God knows we won't get that because they never actually have. I mean, heck, look at the Kelly Thomas case. You had these cops who pretty much beat a man to death, and they got off simply because they were able to show, oh, he didn't die with us. The people at the hospital killed them. I mean, that's sick. And of course, you have people like Dylan Taylor who got shot because they didn't hear them calling for him because they had headphones in. I mean, it really is out of control. And you know, and another thing that really shows that this excuse from the police could be totally fabricated, or is totally fabricated, is the dispatch audio. The fact for 2 hours afterwards they had no clue what was going on. They had no grasp on it. So if this was, I think that they tried to justify this murder after the fact. And this really is murder. There's no other way to justify it. It is a case of murder. Just because he has a badge on, it doesn't make it not murder. It should be treated just like any other case of murder, and it should be investigated legitimately. Heck, I would even advocate have it investigated by a private investigator. That way it could hopefully be looked at objectively and not subjectively like the police always seem to look at things. After all, if he was pulling over a black male because he matched the description of someone who's wanted, that would be very subjective. All right, to continue on with this, and you know, this is another. I just talked about that, but the legal outcomes that I don't expect justice to ever be served for this. Just like I never expected justice to be served for Kelly Thomas, as much as I wanted to see those police officers get what they deserved. They never actually really do. It seems like the police over the years have been granted legal immunity to justify their points when they write up that paperwork. And I think probably the biggest problem that's come out of this, and that always seems to come out of cases like this, is that the media is trying to spin this as an issue of race relations. And that makes no sense to me because I'm just a human being like the kid who got shot. I knew nothing about him, and why does race relations have anything to do with this? If anything, this is an issue of the state, of those of the state being subjective with how they deal with people in in what they do in their job in their day-to-day lives. This has never been an issue of the illusion of race, which if I haven't talked about, I'm pretty sure I've talked about the illusion of race in the past, so I'm not going to go into that. But this has always been, and always will be, an issue of man versus the state, of humanity versus this unnatural power that has filled an illusional vacuum. And the people that say they're going to try and introduce legislation to demilitarize the police, and to that I say, good luck. Good luck taking away all those guns. My great corrupt uncle politician has an M1 carbine from when he was in the police in the 60s. I mean, come on. You really think you're going to be able to disarm? Excuse me. You really think that the police are going to disarm that easily? Not at all. It's, if anything, even if you do disarm them, you're not doing anything about them being subjective with the people that they're looking, that they deal with. Like, they're still generalizing people. And you know, it's really interesting too, now that I think about it, that what we're seeing here is very, very similar to what happened with the Boston bombings as well. We're seeing a total police state clampdown, but there's one key difference. The public isn't accepting this one. Like, the public clearly isn't like, in the case of the Boston bombing, everyone rolled over and was ready to roll over to bow to their great masters, but in this case, it seems like the people of that town, they legitimately realize what is going on. And the fact that they are trying to do everything in their power to bring justice just goes to show you that they are craving an actual change. I'll tell you, this is just an example of the National Defense Authorization Act at work. They didn't pass those bills for nothing. Do you really think they included a provision to detain U.S. citizens without due process with the intention to never use it? Why was it even thought up? Why was it even put in there if they had the intention to never use it on American citizens? It's the only logical way of looking at things. And to the officers who may see this, because I can only hope that maybe someone out there will see this, but they probably won't. If there are any officers out there who see this video, are you really standing on the right side of history? Do you really think history will view you as the good guy in this case? Like, the Nazis who dragged people off to camps, history does not judge them in a good way. How do you think you're any different? Is it because you're in America and not in Germany? I got a bad news for you, buddy. Just because you're in a different farm, that doesn't mean the same things can't happen. That doesn't mean you can't be held to the same accountable, to the same standards. So, yeah, that's pretty much the show for this week. All right, what else can I have to say to close this on? Just, oh, man. Got a good, like, 4 more minutes before I could close off. But, oh, I guess I'll close off talking about what I did in the beginning then, about the distance. And if you are a writer, if you're an artist, if you're a comedian, if you're interested at all in working on a project like this, just hit me up, because we have a lot of good ideas we're brainstorming. And, you know what, just as a little tease, I'm going to throw one of the ideas out there right now. One episode that I've yet to have written, but I have a joke kind of written out for it. And it's called The Union of Anarcho-Fascists. Basically, the group in the show learns of another intellectual circle that is by them, so they decide to go visit it because they think it's a group of fedora-wearing capitalists, or that stereotype. But when they get there, the leader of the group steps up, and you pretty much hear these words come out of his mouth. Alright, everyone, we have a problem today. It looks like the anarcho-communists have learned that we're not actually anarchists, and that we're actually fascists, pretending to be anarchists so that we can fifth column them. Now then, I understand, I hope some of you out there will get that joke, but that's kind of the type of humor that we're looking to do here. Kind of have something of Love and Death, if you've ever seen that movie by Woody Allen. And it looks like I'm starting to reach my end time now, so, anything last to say? That review of Gustav Le Bon's The Crowd. I am right now just finishing up the book, and I'm actually kind of disappointed that I didn't get to finish it before doing this episode, because there's a lot of things that could have come in handy when looking at Ferguson with Le Bon's, in regards to Le Bon's The Crowd. And I can see that people are already eager for the next show to start, so I will say that this is Mitchell Wiechek of the Dorkable Anarchist World, trying to remain optimistic in the age of imperialism.